Why hello there, and welcome to my guide to what I ended up dubbing the Dum Dum Golemancer, which is a Carrion Golem Necromancer setup that can essentially be played with one finger, though if you want to reach like maximum peak efficiency, you are going to need at least two. Now, is this the best build you will ever play? No. Is it the fastest build you will ever play? No. But is it the most damaging build you will ever play? Also no. This build prioritizes quality of life, automation, and tankiness above everything else. So it's not going to clear as fast as something like a tornado shot build with Mage Blood or a Headhunter, and it's not gonna have as good of a DPS as a fully juiced Omniscience Lightning Striker. But it's extremely reliable, both in terms of damage, because Carrion Golems just have very steady DPS, and in terms of defense, because we're not really relying on any gimmicks here. We just have a lot of life, a lot of armor, and we're block capped. You can actually do most bosses on it, it's not too bad. The DPS isn't great, but you have a lot of tankiness, so you can survive a lot of the stuff the bosses will throw at you. But it's not really designed for it. However, if you do eventually want to do some bossing, all it takes is a little bit of finagling with the passive tree, and you can easily swap this into an animated weapon setup, which has a considerably better single target DPS. What this build excels at is just your everyday mapping and running delirium maps. Not necessarily 100% delirious maps, you don't necessarily have the DPS to take down the bosses in a reasonable amount of time, but it will happily waltz through like a T16 map with 2 Dorbs, full Scarabs, full Sextants and all that without any issues. Now, I'm in SSF, so my gear is a bit scuffed, but for the weapon we're using a +2 wand. This one doesn't really have anything else, with trigger, and into it we will socket Desecrate, Bone Offering, and a Life Tap. This gives you a ton of attack and spell block. Then for the helmet, you want to get an item level 86 helmet, which can roll the +3 level of socket and minion gems, and if you manage to get an elder version of it, you want to get minion life as well. And you don't want to get minion damage on this helmet, because that actually reduces the life of the minions that we socket in there, which are Raise Spectre, Raise Zombie. We link these to Feeding Frenzy, and we also add Animate Guardian in there as well. Then for the chest piece, if you have a Brass Dome, run a Brass Dome. I don't have the new Brass Dome yet, so I'm just running a +1 Spectre chest piece with some life and chaos res, and into it we will socket our golems, which are of course the Carrion Golem. So we have Carrion Golem, Brutality, Predator, Minion damage, Multi-Strike, and then actually melee physical damage. I'm running Impale because the chest piece is corrupted, so it would be difficult to change the colors. For the amulet, we run Ashes of the Stars, and we anoint Ravenous Horde. This is just a fantastic amulet for any kind of minion build. It gives us all the things we want in one nice package. After that, we have the shield. If you have an Aegis or Aurora and you can stack some energy shield, good for you, but if you don't, you can get a shaped or I think a Crusader shield with a life recovered on block. And in here we will socket Molten Shell, cast when damage taken if you have an anomalous one, nice, and then Flame Dash, so we have a movement skill. Moving on from there, we have boots. Mine are pretty ridiculous. I've been working on these for quite a while. I have elevated Spectral levels, elevated fire res, and I have veiled movement speed, but realistically you only need life, movement speed, and maybe res. And here we will put Convocation. I like the anomalous one for the movement speed. Then on every single one of my builds I run Portal, and we also run Defiance, Banner, and Vitality. Divergent Vitality gives you a little bit more damage, but you really don't need it. For the belt, you want to get a Stygian Vise with life and res and put a Ghastly Eye into it, and for the gloves, once again, life, res, that's pretty much it. And into the gloves we put an Enlighten level 3, Determination, Tempest Shield, and Purity of Elements. And last but definitely not least, we have the rings, which are just Vermilions with a life and res. This one is a little bit nicer because I also managed to get minion damage on it, but all you really need is just life and res. Another important part of the build are the Flasks, which we're basically automating in their entirety. So the first thing you want to do with your utility Flasks is to roll them so that they gain charges when you are hit by an enemy. This will basically refill them and keep them running all the time. And this is because even though we block most hits, it still counts as being hit, so you're basically regenerating charges all the time. Now you want to get one flask that triggers when you start bleeding, and you want to roll that with immunity to bleeding and corrupting blood. This will essentially make you immune to bleeding, and I'm personally running a quartz flask for the spell suppression and phasing. Then we have a basalt flask that we roll so that once again it gains charges when we are hit, but it also grants immunity to poison, and it triggers when its charges reach full. This is a really cool mod, especially since it will also trigger the flask if it was already full to begin with and you gain some charges. So this way we get a lot of armor. Then we're running an Amethyst Flask, which once again triggers when charges reach full. It gains charges when you're hit by an enemy, and I'm running Chance to avoid being stunned, though you would ideally probably want to get curse removal there. Then we have our first unique flask, which is Rumi's Concoction, which triggers either when charges reach full or when an adjacent flask is used, which in this case is the Amethyst Flask, and this just gives us more block for spells and attacks. And finally, our second unique flask is the Forbidden Taste, because normal life flasks just don't cut it when you have 6,500 life, and this one is actually rolled so that it has reduced charges used, so I can use it 3 times in a row. The tree is pretty much just your box standard minion tree, where you pick up all the minion stuff and then you grab all the adjacent life nodes as well as jewel sockets, and in this case we're actually grabbing quite a bit of spell block as well. The main difference to other minion builds are of course the jewels, because well, we need to get the golem jewels, so you want to run an anima stone, and then you want to run at least 1 primordial harmony, 1 primordial eminence, and 1 primordial might. This makes your golems aggressive, it gives you 2 extra golems, and it buffs them quite a bit as well. And other than that, you want to pick up the sovereignty wheel, go through the mana reservation, and then get the mastery for mana reservation as well. Pick up some easily accessible spell block on the tree, and then everything else just goes into cluster jewels, where you want to run stuff like feasting fiends, renewal, vicious bite, rotten claws, and that kind of stuff. Also, if you are running a brass dome or you just don't have a +1 spectre chest, you kind of want to pick up this node right here, which is Death Attunement, that gives you an extra spectre. And finally, we have the Ascendancy, where we go Mindless Aggression for a ton of juicy stats, Unnatural Strength for the +2 level, Commander of Darkness for the attack speed, the increased damage, and the juicy elemental resistances, and Mistress of Sacrifice, which makes your offering affect you as well. This plays a big role in our block cap, because normally we're at 2740, if we trigger the offering we go to 5265, and then if we use Rumi's Concoction, or if it triggers on its own, it will go to 7073. And this is on top of, you know, having 6,500 health, like 17,000 armor without any flasks, and some max res. You're of course gonna have more if you're running a brass dome, so overall the build is extremely tanky. Now let's talk about Spectres. We're running 4 different Spectres, and the first 2 come from the Ashen Fields. They are the 2 big monkeys, and they are called a Carnage Chieftain and a Host Chieftain. The Carnage Chieftain gives you and your minions frenzy charges, and Host Chieftain gives you and your minions power charges. Then we're running a Merveil's Retainer, which is a sea witch that can be found in the Mineral Pools map. This is a really cool Spectre for Fizz Brutality builds, because she curses a level 30 vulnerability. And finally, we're running an Arena Master, and the way you get this one is you need to get a Warlord map. So you either have to get one as a random drop from a map boss if you have the appropriate like Atlas nodes, or, which is how I usually do it, just reroll Kirak maps until you get a Warlord one. The Arena Master is a really cool Spectre because he has a move where he bashes his shield and gives everyone around him increased damage, attack speed, and movement speed. And that's pretty much it for the build. You put Convocation on your left mouse button, Flame Dash on your right mouse button, and then, if you're feeling really fancy, you can put Death Mark on your middle mouse button or your mouse wheel. And you just walk around. Every now and then you will convocate your minions to you so they don't run too far away. You can right click to dash over stuff, and if you find something really beefy, you can death mark it so that the golems focus it down. Though if you are going to be fighting something chunkier, like one of the bigger bosses, I would actually take convocation off the left mouse button and just put move there, because you don't want to be constantly convocating your minions away from the enemy. And as always guys, I thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and you will give this build a shot if you're into this kind of lazy minion playstyle, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.